If you're in the market for some blood, gore, and yes, a healthy amount of sex, then you're in luck because X gon' give it to you. Hello, I'm Dan Murrell, and I apologize for that. This is my review of X, which is the latest film from writer-director Ty West, perhaps best known for 2009's The House of the Devil and 2011's The Innkeepers. X is about a burlesque bar manager, played by Martin Henderson, who takes his star dancer, played by Brittany Snow, and his future fiancée, played by Mia Goth, to a remote Texas farm in order to shoot a porno film that he hopes can rival the legendary Debbie Does Dallas and make them all millionaires. In addition to the two lead actresses, the crew includes male porn star Jackson Hole, played by Scott Mescudi, better known as Kid Cudi, the film's director, who's played by Owen Campbell, and the director's girlfriend / sound engineer, played by Jenna Ortega. The crew arrives at the farm to find a strange old couple are their hosts, completely unaware that an adult film is happening on their property, and over the next 24 hours, things get even stranger as the crew learns more about the elderly couple's bizarre existence, and the blood begins to flow once the sun sets. X had its premiere earlier this week at the South by Southwest Film Festival, which is a perfect venue for this film because it is modern splatter horror at its best, meaning that it is a great throwback to classic splatter horror with the more modern touches thrown in. The film's title, X, refers to the rating that most adult films got back in the 1970s, but it may as well have a cheeky throwback title to a horror classic, something like Invasion of the Booty Snatchers or Halloween, or my personal favorite, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. My point being, X is definitely not for the squeamish, but if you are looking for an over-the-top, blood-soaked, sex-filled, no-holds-barred amusement park ride, this movie more than fits the bill. X is a film that is served very well by knowing exactly what kind of movie it is, and by casting actors who are able to give a wink to the camera without having to actually wink to the camera. It's not so obviously self-referential that it felt like they were writing themselves into a corner. This is very much an homage and a tribute to the great splatter horror genre, but it's actually a pretty solid entry into it as well. It doesn't stand outside of the genre by being too overly referential. X also doesn't just coast on blood and literal overkill. It saves most of its gags for the third act and is effective because it ratchets up the tension by introducing us to a variety of characters who are all there for different reasons. Some are in it for the money, some for the pleasure, and one character finds themselves unexpectedly drawn in a direction that they did not anticipate. And underneath the breezy porno A story is a really twisted B story about the couple who owns this farm, and as happens with most movies of this type, when we get into the second half of the film, the A story and the B story flip, and if you think you're ready for what's in store, you're not. I can promise you, because as far as you think this movie is going to go, it goes even further without, ironically, getting an X rating itself. This isn't the kind of horror film that will keep you up at night, but it is the kind that will keep your hands close to your eyes, ready to shield them from the grotesqueries that this movie has in store. Now, admittedly, I have not seen Ty West's other horror films. As I've said, I'm a little slow in catching up with the horror genre, but I think he shows a really delightful, almost Hitchcockian flair here for playing the audience like a piano. Sometimes you anticipate a scare that doesn't come. Other scares pop up at places that you don't expect, but they're not just cheap jump scares. Some characters who deserve a break don't get one, and vice versa, and every time you think you can kind of let out a breath, the movie keeps you on your toes with the next thing that you didn't quite expect. It's not a very easy task to make a non-serious, serious horror film, but I think that Ty West pulls it off really well. As I mentioned, helping Ty West on the creative side is the fact that this is an exceptionally well-cast film. Kid Cudi, who was last seen in the Oscar-nominated Don't Look Up, brings the humor and swagger that you would expect to a character named Jackson Hole. Brittany Snow, perhaps looking to sharpen the edges of her resume following the Pitch Perfect trilogy, gives herself fully over to porn star Bobby Lynn, who dreams of easy money and easier pleasure. Jenna Ortega is already appearing in her third horror film of 2021 following Scream and Studio 666, and I think that she is really angling herself to compete for the Scream Queen crown of her generation. I think that she is putting in some really impressive performances in the horror genre especially, and I can't wait to see more of what she does. But allow me to sing the praises of Mia Goth for just a moment, because her role as Maxine, a new face who finds herself with a foot in both the real world with their real troubles and the fantasy world that everyone else has already given themselves over to, is really quite something. It's one of the most impressive performances in a recent horror film, and to go much further into why I like this performance a lot would be to spoil things that should not be spoiled. Suffice it to say, I'm looking forward to a second viewing of this film just so I can fully appreciate Mia Goth's performance for what it is. A lot of it, I didn't even realize what she was doing in the moment. Now, X is a film from A24, which means that it's not necessarily going to cast a wide net. It strays outside the mainstream, so some may grow weary of the slow wind-up this film has in store, and others may be repulsed by the extreme nature of this film in nearly every aspect, from sex to violence to the overall ugh factor. But for those of you that are in that middle zone who don't mind the build-up and appreciate the release, I think you're really going to have a blast. Which actually sounds way more like I'm describing an adult film than I meant to, which might be the point of this whole movie.
Would you like to come inside?
What's the buzz?
If you've ever wondered what would happen if you combined Friday the 13th, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Zack and Miri Make a Porno, X is the answer to that question, and it's a recommendation for me, again with the caveat that it's not going to be for everybody. If you don't like movies that go to extremes, then perhaps you should put in a little extra research to make sure that it's not too much for you. But I think this is going to be one of those midnight movie classics. This was a Thursday night screening that I went to. My theater was not particularly crowded, but for those that do see it in a crowded theater, I think you are especially going to have a good time, because this is the kind of roller coaster movie that is very fun to enjoy with an audience. So if you're able to go to a theater, if you do feel safe doing so, and you have a screening near you that is going to have a good number of people in it, I think that's going to be an extra layer of fun on top of the fun that this movie has in store. So those are my thoughts on X, the splatteriest horror film of 2021 so far. Are you a horror fan? Are you an A24 fan? Do you like both things? If you do, this may be the weekend for you. Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, I want to thank you for watching me here on the channel. I had a review earlier today for the film Deep Water, which is out on Hulu, and I've got my ear to the ground on maybe one or two other things for later this week. Also, Oscar time is nearly upon us, and I am preparing some reviews of nominated films in the animation and documentary and short categories that I'm going to bring to you as we count down the days for the Academy Awards. I'll also be giving you my picks for the Oscars, and of course on Oscar night, I'll give you my reaction to everything. So it's a big week here on the channel, and I'm excited to share it with you. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time. Bye.